We're on our way down to Empire, Ohio, along the West Virginia border to pick up a parts car, another 77 Grand Fury. One of our fans over on Facebook has been watching our build of the Brontosaurus, reached out to us and said, hey, if you guys need parts for that car, I think I've got a car for you.
Yeah, and we're getting it cheap enough that it wouldn't have to have too many good parts on it to pay for itself. We're hoping to hit the mother load. Maybe it'll have the right interior, the right seats and right upholstery and all that. We know it's the right color. We don't know if it's the right upholstery. But even if it's got good chrome plating on the front and rear bumpers, it would be worth it for what we're getting it for.
For sure. It definitely gives us a little bit of a scenic tour outside of Detroit.
And we got good weather for it today too.
Yeah, thank goodness. Truck's holding up, trailer's holding up. Just got to get to find this car, find our contact, and see what we're going to do to get it loaded up. So we'll see how that goes when we get there.
Truck's holding up, trailer's holding up. Jury's still out on the driver.
Well, howdy everyone. My name's Emerson Zentz, and this is my wonderful wife Rachel. We're from Bangor, Wisconsin. We're kind of in this crazy car collecting business too, as you could say. Been in police car collecting since I could drive almost, and extended into checkers and buses and everything else you can think of. And we're very happy to be able to turn over ownership of the 77 Grand Fury for the Ross. That way these guys can restore it here in the shop in Detroit and represent the community that's probably served many communities, but represent the Detroit area.
Absolutely. And Emerson, we want to say thank you so much,
You're welcome.
Rachel, for all your time and hard work today here at the Gilmore Museum. I know you guys traveled a long way and had a lot to go through to get out here before you could make it. But we're very glad that you made it. And what kind of work do you do normally, Emerson?
I actually work for the railroad. I'm a manager of a short line railroad up in Wausau, Wisconsin. I've been railroading for about 20 years now.
20 years, and I understand you're also into bus collecting.
Yes, we actually have a site, the Midwest Bus Museum. We have over 60 buses on display and collected through the years.
And how is that open already?
It is open right now. We have select dates that were open through the year, but we're online at Midwest Bus Museum, and you can check it out and see what we have and see when our open houses are.
Well, that would be great, because I know a lot of folks here that are into big cars, like me and Eric. We like everything big. We like our cars big, we like our trucks big, we like our buses big, and we like our meals and our beers big.
Exactly. Well, thank you again, Ross, so much. I'm glad it's going to you guys.
Nice to meet you. Yes, you as well. And hopefully we'll be able to keep in touch with you, and you'll be able to watch the adventures that Eric and I will have continuing to improve this car week by week. And eventually, when it's ready to show, we hope you'll be one of our guests at the unveiling.
Of course.
That'd be awesome.
Of course.
Yeah,
Our
thank
pleasure.
Good to meet you both.
You too.
Okay. Hello, friends and neighbors. Welcome back. My name's Ross,
And I'm Eric.
and we are Chase Classic Motors. And we serve and protect great cars, like this one behind us. It's a 1977 Plymouth Grand Fury 440 Pursuit, the last of the big, full-size pursuit cars made by Chrysler. We like to call it our Blue Brontosaurus, because it's one of the last great behemoths, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So what are we going to be doing today, Eric?
Well, today we're going to be installing the fuel tank. We had it professionally repaired at Ray's radiator. We were unable at the time to find a new fuel tank for it. Since then, I actually found out they've gone back into production. But we've got the original gas tank going back on it.
And preserving the original parts is always the best bet.
Yeah, a lot of the aftermarket stuff is junk. I don't need to tell you. So we try to save the original.
So we're going to go ahead and get that tank reinstalled today. Eric's already plumbed some of the fuel lines, so we'll get you caught up on what we did last time. And I think we're going to enjoy this. What do you say? Should we get started?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, let's go. We're restoring our 77 Plymouth Grand Fury police car as a tribute to our car show friend and longtime supporter, Gary Mitchell. Gary was the young patrolman photographed behind the wheel of the green Grosse Pointe car featured in the 1977 Plymouth police car brochure.
Gary eventually became a chief of police in my hometown of Grosse Pointe, so we couldn't wait to surprise him with the news. Our goal is to put Gary back in uniform and back behind the wheel of our soon-to-be identical Brontosaurus Plymouth, so we can recreate this amazing photograph for our car's 50th anniversary. The clock is ticking, so getting our car's fuel tank reinstalled and running again will be a big step forward.
All right, so this is the original gas tank out of our 77 C-body police car. I pulled this gas tank out of this car a couple of months ago. It was full of rust. This car has gone through the hands of a few people before we got it. And God bless them. One of them at one point tried to clean the rust out of the tank, and there's actually a video online of this exact car, before we owned it, driving across a lot under its own power with this tank in it after they cleaned it. Well, I've already been there and done that with rust in fuel tanks, and you really have to be very, very aggressive. It's best to start over with all fresh, fuel tank, fuel lines, rebuild the carburetor, rebuild or replace the fuel pump, and all that stuff. If there's any rust in the system, I promise you it'll give you trouble. So my first instinct was to go on to Rock Auto Parts or whatever and try to get a new gas tank. Well, at the time they weren't in production and they didn't know when they were going to be available. So we felt that we had no choice really but to have the original one repaired. So I sent this one off to Ray's Radiator, which is a company that's been around here in southeast Michigan for a long time. They've got a really good reputation, and they charged us what I thought was a very reasonable price to repair this tank. They soldered a couple of little pinholes shut for us. They completely cleaned all the rust out of the inside of the tank for us, coated the inside of the tank in a fuel-resistant sealer, and they powder coated the outside of it in this silver powder coat. So it doesn't look too bad either. Since then, new gas tanks have actually gone back into production. So if I'd known that was coming, maybe I would have waited and bought a new one. But how, stuff goes out of production, you have no idea if they're even ever going to build it again. So I figured, why sit on our thumbs? Let's just get this one rebuilt. And in the long run, it was actually a little bit cheaper to have this one repaired anyway. Here's the filler neck for it. This, of course, goes out the back of the car. So the taillights of the car will be right here. There's an access panel that flips here to get to the gas cap. New donut on the gas tank. This clamp right here is what holds the filler neck to the car, keeps it sturdy for when you're putting fuel in it. And it all came out pretty good. So I'm happy with the gas tank. And that kind of brings me to the sending unit. This sending unit was fairly rusty. I took it apart a little bit. You can take the resistor out here by bending back these little tabs. I cleaned it out real good, and then I soaked it in my ultrasonic cleaner. And you can tell it actually came out pretty clean. You can get new socks for them. You can get new floats for them. You can get new gaskets for them. You can get new rings for them to hold them in. And then don't forget the ground strap. I got this from year one, if I remember correctly. And of course, so how this works is power comes from the car's gauge back to this post on the sending unit, goes to the resistor, which changes resistance on this arm here. And then, of course, the sending unit is its own ground. So you have to have this ground strap. When you hook it all back up into the car, the sending unit is kind of isolated from the car by the rubber hoses. So this ground strap will clip on here, clip onto the metal line of the car, bridging the rubber hose, and that's your ground. So if you don't have this, your gauge isn't going to work. And so let's test it. I got my ohm meter here. Put one lead, it doesn't matter which, on the post that's going to get our signal from the gauge. Put another lead on just the body of the sending unit. You can see right off the bat, this would be an empty tank. We've got 66 ohms of resistance, and as I move that arm, resistance changes. So now we're at 38 ohms, 28 ohms, 23 ohms, 21 ohms. That's almost a full tank. We're at about 10 ohms. I move this upside down, that would be a full tank. Yeah, we're at about 10 ohms, 10.8 right there. So it looks like it's working just fine. So let's install this sending unit, and then we can finally install the gas tank, which I'm very much looking forward to. All right, gasket goes on. Okay, now a lot of times what the manufacturers will do is they will have a little tab somewhere in the sending unit that goes into a little slot so that you don't accidentally put it in upside down or something. Looks to me like that's our little tab right there. And that is going to line up with that little slot right there. There we go, locked right into place. Put a little cam ring on and lock her in. Now, of course, this is a reproduction cam ring and a reproduction gasket. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not real happy with that fit. Right there is where it should lock in. All right, so I have actually seen this once before. I think we're going to have to double gasket this. Otherwise, it's going to leak when we fill it up with fuel. Luckily, the gasket that came off this thing was actually in pretty good shape. I think the people that tried to clean this out the first time didn't actually, I mean, they tried. They actually did do a pretty decent job trying. So the gasket that came off of this wasn't too bad. Matter of fact, the donut that the filler neck is into right now, I didn't buy that. That came with the car the way we got it. There's no way, as pliable and as nice as this donut is, there's no way that's the original one from '77. So it's been replaced once already. There we go. That's much better. Now, if you are working on a car where gasoline has been in the tank, it's best to use a brass punch for this so that you don't make a spark. However, this tank is freshly rebuilt. I'm not too worried about any sparks because there is no fuel vapor at all right now. Yeah, it's almost too tight with two gaskets on it. See, before, when I tried to move the sending unit, when the lock ring was on, it was wiggly. Now, it's locked right in place. So we should be in good shape. I also cut a little foam pad. I don't know if I needed to do this. This is just me being persnickety for the top of the tank. Just because, you know, when it left the factory, it would have had one, so now it's going to have another one. So let's get ready to put it in.
Well, Eric, I really enjoyed that last segment you did, especially when you ran into trouble with the gasket.
Yeah, well, there's no teacher like experience. I've had that problem before, installing sending units. You really don't want them to be loose. I mean, just look at where the sending unit is. It's about a third of the way down in the tank. So if you think about it, and you fill this car all the way up, full of fuel, if it's not sealed, it's going to leak. So it's got to seal.
So what are you going to do now?
Well, the tank is pretty much ready to go in. This hose here, that's actually a vapor hose. I clamped it to the tank already just because I'm not going to have real good access to this once I put it in the car. I put way too much hose on here, so once you get the tank in the car, I'll set it to fit on the line that's on there. I'll cut it to fit and I'll clamp it. I've also got the straps and the bolts ready to go. Now, we aren't doing a concours restoration on this car, but we also do want to preserve it. So what I did with these straps is I literally just cleaned them up real good, and I painted them with some silver Rust-Oleum, and they'll go on and they won't rust again for a long time.
I like to think of this as we don't just serve and protect great cars, we also preserve and protect great cars.
Yep.
So let's see what happens next when you go ahead and put that fuel tank in.
All righty.
Let's take a look.
I think we are ready to start putting this fuel tank in. I got the straps ready to go. I got my wrench extension socket ready to go. Here we go. Filler neck's got to go in first because it's got to go way up there behind that panel between the tail lights. Okay. Actually, you know what? Let's see. Yeah. Do you think you can hold it? Mm-hmm. These straps came out of this car, didn't they?
I imagine they did.
It's times like this where you wonder why they couldn't make the bolt just a little bit longer, or just give you just a little bit more strap. Like literally, they give me one more thread on that bolt, it would have gone. All right, it started. If you want to, you can remove your head. I should have put these bolts in a little further before we started. They fit in the straps so tight you gotta thread them in, which I'm sure they weren't like that when they were new. That's just a consequence of them being installed. There we go. This is one of those times when air tools would be quite helpful. All right, that's pretty much bolted in. I can still fairly easily reach over here where the sending unit is to hook up the wire and to hook up our supply and return hoses from the sending unit to the metal lines on the car. We didn't show you that. I did make new metal lines for this car, which wasn't easy. It was very tedious. We got them made. So I guess the next step is to bolt the filler neck to the car behind our access panel to put fuel in it. So for that, we got to bring it down. All right, so this is the access on a 77 Plymouth Grand Fury to where you put fuel in it. So I'm going to have to work around the bumper a little bit. You can see the filler neck is still loose. There is a tab behind the bumper here that holds the neck on with that clamp I showed you earlier. What would actually have been a smart idea to just take this access off. It actually comes off fairly easily. You know what? That wasn't the easiest way to do this, perhaps. There we go.
Well, Eric, I gotta say, I think I've been used and abused a lot in my life, but I don't think I've ever been used as a telescopic jack before.
Yeah, I was going to maybe ask you what was on your mind, but I thought it was kind of obvious.
I think it was too. But hey, we got a gas tank in this car now.
Yeah.
How's that make you feel?
Oh, awesome. This car was such a pain in the butt to drive. I mean, no gas tank, so we had to run it off of a gas tank on the fender and a hose going to it. No keys, so we have to basically hotwire the ignition and start it with a mechanic's switch that he would use to crank the engine if he's, doing a compression test or something on his own with no help. And the outside door handle was broken on the driver's door, so we couldn't even get in the car from the outside through the driver's door.
This old Grand Fury barely qualified as a car when we first got it.
Yeah, it was, it's complete and it's solid, but it was a real basket case. So the three most annoying things to me to drive were that stupid gas tank on the fender, not being able to get in the driver's door, and not being able to start it with keys. We've got two of those things fixed now, and believe me, we're working on the third. So
we'll get to that one as soon as you're ready.
Yeah.
I know I'm ready. We'll wait till you've got a few more things plumbed out here.
Yeah.
For this project.
Yeah, to get there, we have to rebuild the steering column that you'll see that video. We had to go to Traverse City and pull it out of a parts car there. That was an adventure. And do a little bit of wiring under the hood.
But after that, we're going to be driving this car. I think it's going to make both of us a lot happier.
Oh, yeah, it will.
Well, let's see what happens next. Stay tuned. Thanks, everyone.
I don't have to look around the hood.